Hi, so I'm Michael Hoyle, and today I'll be talking to you about rewilding large predators in North America. So, why rewild large predators? Well, the primary reason to rewild large predators, to reintroduce them back into the wild, is because they are a key species in our ecosystems. So, they operate a niche on top of the food chain. When they disappear, the food chain is damaged and it affects the entire ecosystem. Um, Another reason is because they are charismatic animals. They bring many tourism dollars into places where they are reintroduced, and they cause excitement for conservation, which is important. But I'll get into all of those reasons in more detail in the presentation ahead. So, what is the problem? What is the danger to our ecosystems? Well, right now, our ecosystems are being threatened due to a number of reasons. Climate change is a big one. um, Pollution, but the other big one is the loss of biodiversity. So we are currently living through a mass extinction, which means that animals are going extinct at a rate 1,000 to 10,000 times as quickly as if there wasn't a mass extinction going on. So they're going extinct at a breakneck pace. Over 26,500 species on planet Earth are endangered at the moment. Many of our ecosystems currently have there are just large areas of land where no predators exist, no large predators exist on them at all. Um, and every lost species further weakens our ecosystems and makes it more likely for other species to die out. So the effects of this are just going to get worse and worse as more species become extinct. So it's very important that we act now and prevent this trend. So today we're going to be talking about these large predators. So these are predators that are on top of the food chains in their respective biomes. They have natural ranges across the entire world. Today we're going to be focusing on the North American large predators. So that would be up top. We've got the American black bear. We've got the gray wolf right in the center, and we also have the mountain lion. But these are 35 of the world's biggest predators. Of these species, 80% of them have declining populations. 64% of these species are endangered and in danger of going extinct. So not only are much of the world missing these predators from the landscapes they used to roam, but also most of these predators in the near future are going to go extinct if we don't act. Um, so the threat to our ecosystems is very real. Well, what do our ecosystems do for us? Why is that important? Well, ecosystems provide many services for us, and it's most commonly broken down in four ways. So that's provisioning services. So that's like the food that we get from them, hunting animals for food, the food that we grow, lumber, fresh water, etc. Cultural services are the non-material goods that nature provides. Things like the tourism I talked about before, which has a monetary value, but even just the way that we feel healthy in nature, the way it affects our mental health, recreation. We evolved from nature. It's very important to our art, to beauty, and we'll lose it if we're not careful. Um, Regulating services are very important. So this is how our ecosystems affect air quality, how they affect the climate, um, things like trees and other plants uh, not allowing erosion to happen, compacting the soil. Otherwise, erosion is a big problem. Things like pollinating, so that's how plants reproduce. They need pollinators, they need insects in order to do that process. And finally, the bedrock of all ecosystem services is supporting services. So this is how nutrients cycle in the ecosystem, how something dies and decomposes, and the nutrients go into the soil and then back into the plants and then into the food chain. Animals eat them, etc. This is how soils break down and form uh, photosynthesis, which creates the air we breathe. So essentially, we can look at all these services. Ecosystems are responsible for the air we breathe, for the water we drink, for the food we eat. Healthy ecosystems are vital to humans as a species. And it's easy to feel distance from them when we live in these buildings with artificial air conditioning and you don't know where your food comes from. But in a very real way, we are reliant on our ecosystems, and our ecosystems are increasingly threatened. And it's our duty, in my opinion, to do the best we can to prevent that. Um, so, what effects do predators disappearing have on ecosystems? Well, predators, especially these large predators, have a very unique role on top of the food chain. They would be the hawk in this image here, the tertiary consumer. And when they disappear, a trophic cascade happens, which means that on all levels of the food chain, the ecosystem is affected. Like I mentioned to you before, when one animal disappears from a food chain, from an ecosystem, it weakens that ecosystem because an ecosystem is a lot of complex interactions. However, when an entire niche disappears, when the top of the pyramid disappears, the effects of that are huge. What'll happen is that, like, say, if a gray wolf disappears from an area, like it's disappeared from much of the U.S., the thing it hunts, so deer and other species such as that, ungulates, their populations will grow rapidly. The vegetation that those ungulates eat will disappear, will become threatened, um, and this will affect all other parts of the ecosystem. This will affect the amount of photosynthesis happening, the amount of biomass being created, the amount of air and water these plants can cycle through. It'll also affect the smaller predators, which, with decreasing pressure from the large predators, will also have a boom in population. Um, so, and the interactions get even more complex than that because um, because uh, ecosystems are really a large amount of very complex interactions. And when a huge part of them disappears, like large predators are disappearing in many parts of the world, the ecosystem changes rapidly, becomes super unstable, and very threatened by other factors such as climate change, which is why I have a scale on the screen here because balance is vital for ecosystems. And when they lose that balance, they become threatened and they become very weak. Uh, Another reason these large predators are vital for ecosystems is they create what's called ecological hotspots. So around their kill sites, around the carcasses, many other species, such as scavengers, use these carcasses uh, to eat themselves, to survive themselves. So they support these creatures with their kills. Furthermore, those carcasses then um, decompose and become nutrients for the soil, for the entire ecosystem. So when you're removing those carcasses, those nutrients, you're hurting the scavenger animals as well, and also the general amount of nutrients in the ecosystem. So we know now why we should rewild large predators, but is it feasible to do it in this increasing age of human development? Well, that's why the study was done by Ribble C. Wolf, who found all of these areas worldwide and in North America that have a low human footprint, that are protected, um, where we could today rewild animals with some success. They also have large prey bases so that they know these predators can survive. Um, and yeah, so today there's 12 spots just in the study for the American black bear, for the gray wolf, and for the puma, which would be great for rewilding. Uh, and to get into very real case studies of where this was successful, in Yellowstone, you had wolves disappear from the environment for decades, and in 1995, they brought them back, they rewilded them. Today, a population of 500 wolves, gray wolves, exists in the greater Yellowstone ecosystem. They've brought an estimated 83 million in tourism dollars to the region. So people who've said in surveys they came specifically to the park to see these wolves, and what they spend on hotels, Airbnbs, restaurants, etc. That money goes into the region. Um, and they've become the second most anticipated in the park, but behind the American black bear. So species like the wolf, like the American black bear, it's why they're called charismatic predators. They get people excited about seeing them, and they get people excited about conservation. So it's very important that in conservation we also highlight these animals because that's what gets people passionate. That's what brings economic boom to regions such as Yellowstone. Um, Also, they found that the amount of livestock predation by these wolves was within reason, was within the amounts they expected, and that there were no human attacks in the park. Which is a great segue because now we're going to be talking about the controversies with wolves. Why do people oppose them? Um, a great study to talk about this is Colorado, because recently Colorado reintroduced wolves into western Colorado into many sites. I believe it was 10 sites. Um, and it was a very contested vote. It was a 51 to 49% vote on passing the bill. Um, Many of those concerned about the Reintroduction Act are ranchers, are landowners. Um, the reason they're concerned is because they rely on livestock for their economic well-being, and livestock predation by wolves and other large predators does happen. However, it is shown that non-lethal deterrents are very effective in deterring livestock predation. So this is things such as colored flags along fence lines, flashing lights, and range riders, which would be a role where they ride with the creatures with the cattle to prevent predation, but also to remove any carcasses because carcasses attract predators, and if predators know there's a kill site there, they're likely to come back there to look for food. So if you remove the carcasses, you follow the herds, you use these other non-lethal deterrents, livestock predation is shown to be kept to a minimum. These are shown to be very effective methods. And House Bill 1375 in Colorado is a great example of legislation that recognizes this. And furthermore, that legislation says that if livestock owners uh, have the non-lethal deterrents in place and are using them effectively, then any animals that do get killed by wolves, because it can still happen that some livestock predation happens, well, those are going to be reimbursed by the government. So that's an example of great legislation that can be done to entirely eliminate the concerns of livestock owners. Furthermore, it creates in range riders a new economic possibility for many people who are not happy in, say, corporate jobs and office jobs. Uh, it would create a new role that would be necessary and would be a great economic benefit to the job economy in the region. So, really, with proper legislation and proper non-lethal deterrence, this predation can be affected. The other major issue that's often brought up is a concern in these large predator rewilding cases is human predation. And while it can happen, um, especially in North America, it is a largely an overreaction. And the reason for this is that predation by wolves, by black bears, doesn't, by grizzly bears even, doesn't happen very often. Bears don't hunt humans, so only the polar bear does occasionally because it lives in a different environment. But bears largely in Canada and North America don't hunt humans. When they do interact with humans, it's likely because they feel threatened, possibly their cubs are nearby. And because of that, only 9% of bear interactions involved in fatalities, and the interactions themselves are very rare. Wolf fatalities are also very rare. There's only been 2 fatalities in America since the 21st century. Ultimately, the interactions with humans are more dangerous for the predator populations because this causes humans to kill the animal, possibly to kill other animals, and to not support conservation efforts. Um, so largely the media coverage and these attacks are more detrimental actually to the predators than to humans. It's not to say they don't happen, but other deaths from animals such as dogs, bees, and snakes kill 60 people a year. They're much more likely than deaths from these large predators. Yet these large predators often get a lot of media attention when attacks do occur. Now the problems are more severe in low income countries, in places where people's jobs are much more tied to the land, and they work in closer proximity with these animals, and also where they have more large cats such as tigers, which generally are more likely to stalk humans and more effective hunters. Um, so it can be a problem in places across the world, and it's worth being talked about in low income countries where we're talking about also rewilding predators, but it can be more controversial in that way. But in rich countries such as North America and Canada, where people are less likely to interact with these animals and attacks are much less likely to be fatal, It's largely an overreaction by the media and fear mongering rather than a real threat. Although it can happen, obviously. So in conclusion, rewilding large predators is crucial for our ecosystems. Our ecosystems are crucial for the health of all of us, and it's a very feasible thing to reintroduce to these species into many sites across North America. It'd be a great benefit not only to the ecosystem but to the economies of the region, and for that reason, we should all act now in supporting these measures in states where they happen and in publicly talking to our senators, representatives, and say that these conservation efforts are important and we do support them. Thank you very much for listening to my talk, and I hope you care now as much about this issue as I do. Thank you.